All right, so on this one, I'm actually saying how Jesus could be an actual alien. All right, I had to go back and do this to make the video quicker and more comprehensive. So I did some inserts and rearranged some things. It needed to happen. All right, this way, you know, people's attention spans. So when it comes down to it, basically, this is what it is. It shows that there was a spaceship or something like that that came in with clouds.
As I was looking, I saw a tempestuous wind coming from the north, and there was a huge cloud and flashing fire, surrounded by a bright light, and from the midst of the fire was something that looked like electrum.
And they had the angels, okay, or the aliens, came down from a spaceship with light that was beaming down onto them.
Over the heads of the living creatures was the likeness of an expanse that sparkled like awesome ice, stretched out above their heads.
And through frequency, we understand something that has a very high frequency with, you know, of the power of electrum, which is considered spirit, by the way. Certain some more that it caused an electrical discharge. All right, an electrical discharge, like seeing lightning roll around in a cloud. All right, sound tearing the universe that is around us, because they were encompassing more than one dimension at a time when Ezekiel saw the vision.
And when the living creatures would go forth and return, their movement had the appearance of flashes of lightning.
Now I'm going to show you how those dimensions work inside of this dimension in the way that they were able to do it. Now I'm explaining, or want you to see in the full version of how electricity works in dimensional paths, because this is how waves can come to you from a different location in a radio and not interfere with another transmission of frequency that is going in a different direction, because it technically lives on a different plane, which is another frequency. All right, check this out.
Ratio of the voltage across it to the current flowing in it. So I will pass some DC into the coil. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes, you go. Pass AC into this coil. We've got about 5 amps of it, have we? No, less than that. We want some more. That's it. About 5 amps of that, yeah. And then we can use a second coil merely connected to a voltmeter. When I put this second coil on the top, it gets some induced voltage by a mechanism which I do not understand, and I suspect neither does anyone else. But if I turn this second coil at right angles, it's always been our experience, you can find a place where the voltage is 0, as long as the coils remain at right angles. It's as if they lived in separate worlds and didn't want to know about each other. Now, in that respect, I was reminded by a drawing by
Head east.
Escher, who's done many marvelous drawings, that it was like the drawing of the men on the staircase. And of them, the artist himself said, here we have 3 forces of gravity working perpendicular to one another. Here is an artist being more of a scientist than we are ourselves. 3 earth planes, he said, cut across each other at right angles, and human beings are living on each of them. It is impossible for the inhabitants of different worlds to walk or sit or stand on the same floor, because they have different conceptions of what is horizontal and what is vertical. Yet they may well share the use of the same staircase. On the top staircase, illustrated here, 2 people are moving side by side and in the same direction, and yet one of them is obviously going downstairs and the other upstairs. Contact between them is out of the question, because they live in 2 different worlds and therefore can have no knowledge of each other's existence. They remind me sometimes of a chemist and an engineer.
And be in a different realm. All right. So, anyway, that they really could be aliens from like spaceships and stuff like this, for real. And you know, them hopping through the future and the past. Think of all the crazy things we have ideas of. Why wouldn't they be actually doing it already? So, I mean, the angels. I'm talking about the angels and Jesus. Like that would be the reason why things are the way they are. So, I'm just going to leave that with you. All right, hold it down. All right, so not in the... I'm going to show you basically they were on something like a gyroscope when they were moving around that was created from energy somehow. Okay? That they put together. All right? And these are the things that we're learning ourselves how to do through perception. Okay? So, they were on something like a gyroscope. It moved like a gyroscope. And what is a gyroscope? I'm going to show you right now. It was wheels within wheels.
The wheels and their structure appeared to glow like chrysolite, and the four of them looked alike. Their appearance and structure looked as though a wheel were within a wheel. When they moved, they could go in any of the four directions without turning as they went. Their rims were so high that they inspired awe, and the rims of all four were full of eyes all around. Whenever the living creatures moved, the wheels would move along with them, and when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels would also be lifted up. They would go where the Spirit inclined them to go, wherever the Spirit went. The wheels would be lifted up together with them, for the Spirit operating on the living creatures was also in the wheels. Each goes straight forward, going wherever the Spirit would incline them to go. They would not turn as they went.
Gyroscopes are essentially circular things. A scientific gyro is usually mounted in gimbal rings. So that there is the wheel, here is the inner ring, here is the outer ring. All three sets of pivots, the axes pass through the center of mass of the gyro. Now I will tell you what precession is. A torque, by the way, is a twisting force. Instead of a push, which is a force, you push a thing which is pivoted and it twists. So torque is a twisting force. The result of the twisting force is a movement ring. All three sets of pivots
head east on I-80 East
pass through the center of mass of the gyro. Now I will tell you what precession is. A torque, by the way, is a twisting force. Instead of a push, which is a force, you push a thing which is pivoted and it twists. So torque is a twisting force. The result of the twisting force is a movement, a rotation, but not in the axis in which you applied the torque. And we call that precession. So I put a torque on the outer ring, it is the inner that precesses. I put a torque on the inner ring, it is the outer that precesses. It will work in either direction. Oh, you're cheating, I can hear my critics saying. You're pulling it round as well as doing that. All right, we will satisfy the critics. We will hang a weight from the inner ring so that gravity and not I shall put on the torque. And there you see a precession. Not the sort of movement you really expected, because you are accustomed in higher mathematics to a torque producing an acceleration. Here, a torque produces purely a rotation. And if I put 3 times the mass on, I get 3 times the angular velocity. A different sort of device from our common experience.
And something that looked like torches of bright fire was moving back and forth between the living creatures, and lightning was flashing out from the fire. As I was watching the living creatures, I saw one wheel on the earth beside each of the living creatures with 4 faces. When they moved, these would move, and when they stood still, these would stand still. And when they were lifted up from the earth, the wheels would be lifted up together with them, for the Spirit operating on the living creatures was also in the wheels.
That type of technology being in the Bible as a vision, or not even a vision, actually something that happened for real. That in itself is kind of like a proof or a deeper level of evidence that maybe Jesus is an alien for real, and they're made from different densities of light. Another dimensional person to where they are on a different plane, and they can move through, their magnetic direction, their magnetic perception, I guess.